John Wagner. Anthony was my brother, and he was a student here, but what you may not know is that board of pictures is from his funeral. We just buried him 2 days ago.
We are dedicating this teach-in to Anthony Wagner, who was very active with World Can't Wait and We Are Not Your Soldiers. We have a memorial sheet up here. In fact, the last time most of us saw him was at the memorial, the vigil for Scott Olsen, another Iraq War vet who was seriously wounded at Occupy Oakland. Anthony was in the middle of the Occupy movement because he knew that that was for our people. And he even left, he was part of planning this teach-in, and then he left to go to New York for Occupy Wall Street because he couldn't wait to get there and be part of the vets contingent there, again standing with Scott Olsen. And then he suddenly passed away a week ago today. So we are not only dedicating this to his memory as a soldier who resisted these wars for empire and brought that truth. We call him a truth seeker and a truth teller, because he went wherever the truth took him, and he took his truth to the youth of this country who are so seriously in danger of being recruited to fight and die in these wars for empire. And we dedicate this to his memory, but we also do that in order to encourage all of you to step forward and carry just some of the load that he carried with such grace and intelligence. We're also very happy and proud to have here with us Anthony's parents, right here, Mr. and Mrs. Wagner, who were incredibly supportive of Anthony and all of his work, including when it wasn't always so easy and comfortable. So that's the backdrop to this teach-in. The last year we have complete figures for, the military spent $9 billion a year recruiting young people to fight and kill in these wars. And that's direct budget. That doesn't even count all the video games and all the other social commodities that glorify slaughter and acclimate youth to that mentality. The recruiters are allowed to roam freely in our high schools. If people weren't aware of it, the No Child Left Behind opened up, makes all the contact information for high school students, I think from the age of 16 on, freely available to military recruiters, so they can call them up at home, on their cell phones, whatever, unless the parents or the student knows enough to opt out of the system. But the default position is that information will go to the recruiters. They're very targeted. They focus on schools with the lowest percentage of students that expect to go to college. Whatever the other demographics, that's what these vultures zero in on. They avoid the magnet schools. I was just talking to a young woman who graduated a few years ago from Jones Prep, which is right across the way here. It's a public school, but it's one of the 5 best in the state. Hardly ever see recruiters there. We go to Orr High School, or high schools down the south side. Boy, Orr High School, they were always there, almost every day. This year, they've actually moved into the high school. They have an office. 5 days a week, they are there at that high school. That's overwhelmingly not only Black and Latino, but students coming from poor families. The recruiters can tell you anything to get you to sign up, anything. You won't have to go overseas if you don't want to. The wars are over. They're winding down. You can choose where you deploy, or if you deploy. You can choose your MOS, all of which is completely a lie. But once you sign that contract, it's binding on you. It's not binding on the military. And that's actually the law. And we know all these things because we've heard it from students who've been told it by the recruiters. This is not made up. Another thing we've learned, and it actually was recently documented in a study that just came out a few months ago, there are very complex reasons why young people sign up for the military. I think if we have the notion that it's economic draft alone, that's very one-sided. If you study the counties where the soldiers who died in the war came from, they did not exhibit any higher unemployment statistics, any higher poverty statistics than average. They do not overwhelmingly draw from poorer communities. And as a matter of fact, they overwhelmingly draw from working class communities. But as a matter of fact, in terms of casualties, and I can't pretend to explain this, white people are overrepresented in casualties, people who are actually killed. And I think part of the reflection, one of the things that this study came out with is because from these white working class communities, they also sign up because they think they're serving their country. They think that this is part of their service to their country. And they don't understand that it's service to the 1% that actually owns and runs this country. And another thing we saw that there was a real bump in recruitment, not only after the economic collapse in late 2008, but directly after Obama was elected. A lot of young people thought, hey, hope and change, the wars are over. Now it's going to be a whole different situation. And the recruiters actively used that to try to recruit more. This was part of the wars are over line that recruiters were pushing a lot in 2009 because now we've got Obama in the White House.
A lot of these kids have grown up with Iraq and Afghanistan wars being the backdrop of their lives. It's just, they've always just been going on, you know, and nobody really questions it. You know, they've been told that these occupations, these wars and occupations are about protecting us from terrorism, that they're about bringing democracy to these countries. And so we go in there and kind of dismantle that all for them. And we tear that down.
We do our best.
We do our best. You know, we bring the reality of U.S. wars and occupations to the students. And we also stress the moral responsibility of the youth to actively resist being recruited into these wars, actively, you know, help their friends from being recruited, but at the same time also oppose these wars. What happens is that typically an Iraq or Afghanistan vet will go into the classroom with a representative of World Camp Weight, and usually the vet will start to speak, and he or she will talk about how it was they were recruited into the military. They'll then talk about their experiences in the wars and occupations, and oftentimes this involves revelations of you know, their own of having killed civilians, or you know, witnessing buddies kill civilians, being wounded, seeing people get killed. Oftentimes what happens then is that students will then start to share stories about you know, members of their own family or family friends who come back from these wars and how they've struggled. So there's a sort of real opening up, you know, that happens in the classroom, and it's very much needed. You know, it kind of creates that space for that all to happen. The U.S. is really not liberating the women in Afghanistan. In fact, we've made the situation for women there worse. It's much more impressive now than it was, you know, before we went in. Well, yes, there is, you know, this Islamic fundamentalist extremism, but the U.S. invading and occupying that country just reinforces that. So if you support one, you're really reinforcing the other. We'll also, you know, maybe, you know, focus on a particular aspect, particular crime of these wars, like torture and indefinite detention. You know, night raids on civilian homes where people are dragged out of their homes, they're, you know, handcuffed, you know, they're threatened, their lives are threatened. In some cases, civilians have been killed outright after being dragged out of their homes. will talk about predator drone attacks on civilians, particularly wedding parties. American lives are not more important than other people's lives.
I'm going to preface the speech that he wrote by saying that his last day on this earth, we were on Occupy Wall Street. It's the very last thing he did. But also to the last day of his life, he was tormented day and night by nightmares and drug addiction and alcoholism in an attempt to wipe out the thoughts of the innocent people he had to kill. It was ordered to shoot on. And this is a speech he wrote. The We Are Not Your Soldiers speaking tour is a crucial instrument in the counter-military recruitment campaign being launched by World Can't Wait organization. As a veteran of the Iraq War affected by PTSD, it's difficult to talk about some of the abhorrent atrocities that are rife in combat, but I truly feel that it would be irresponsible of me not to speak out against the continuing crimes of our government. I didn't serve this country for 6 years to sit back and watch as the atrocities continue to unfold. With the We Are Not Your Soldiers speaking tour, I'm going to the high schools in my community and offering up an honest commentary on the realities of combat and military life. I myself was recruited out of high school after spending a year in Baghdad with the 1st Cavalry Division in 2004. My life has never been the same. I was a Bradley crew member awarded the Combat Action Badge on the notorious and deadly Route Irish. A lot of our younger brothers and sisters are coaxed into propagating the senseless war with promises of better life, good health care, and college money. Of course, these benefits come at a cost that the military recruiters are reluctant to talk about. And that's where we need more of my fellow veterans to come in. I know there are other veterans out there who can understand how critical it is to speak out against these illegal and immoral wars that are clearly being fought for empire, not freedom. I refuse to stand by doing nothing while military recruiters go into the high schools and recruit the youth in our communities to fuel this festival of ignorance called the War on Terror. We as military veterans have certainly earned the right to redress grievances with our government. Right now, my grievance is with the despicable poverty draft taking place in America. My fellow OIF, OEF veterans, please help out in this effort to stem the flow of bodies returning in flag-draped boxes and atrocities committed in our name. Speak out on a We Are Not Your Soldiers speaking tour in a city near you.
His mom, Cindy, and when Anthony was still in the Army, he did a video of all the pictures different ones had taken while they were over there and the atrocities, and he put it to music, and it's about 7 or 8 minutes long. There have been hundreds of copies basically made of this video, and he handed them out to soldiers and families, and I in turn handed it out to family and friends. And in fact, a girlfriend of mine, her nephew and some of his friends were all there talking about going to the service, and they had the recruiters there, and she goes, I want to show you something. And she showed them this video he had made. They were appalled. They said, no, we'll figure something else out. And that just, I was so grateful for that he saved people from not going in. And it was so important for that. Eventually the upper brass of the military seen it, this video. They called him into the office and strongly suggested not to pass this video out any longer because, let's face it was bad for business. And their excuse was they didn't want the Iraqi to use it for propaganda. And he's like, oh, okay, and he went back to distributing anyway, as Anthony would. So I wanted to share that with you. But
my brother just bought the new Call of Duty that came out. I don't know if you guys know this really, really realistic shooting fighting game. Besides the fact that it gets really graphic, and she was saying like now the newest thing is like when you kill someone, like sometimes you have to they'll be crawling on the ground and you have to keep shooting them while they're crawling, just really graphic. And on top of that, there is a flyer in there for Army recruitment inside the game when you buy it. That just made my jaw drop. I was just like, are you kidding right now?
Well, between those military films, Xbox Live, it's I don't know, it's like a recruitment flyer.
We've had recruiters, it's reported over and over, the recruiters never talk about war. They don't talk about war. You think you are signing up to go to some factory in Iowa. Nothing about blood, nothing about death. It's just a job opportunity.
We have to go in there and we have to present the truth. What are these wars really about? They're not about, protecting us from terrorism. They're not about liberating the people of those countries. They're about expanding U.S. empire. And that is what you will fight and die for if you join. You're not going to die for some, great cause. You will die for just, the interest of the ruling class, and that's it. And you will probably have to commit horrible crimes, in the name of empire.
The percentage of veterans who actually go to college, complete college on the GI Bill, take a wild guess. 6.
It's very unfortunate that there are so many veterans who are home, who are damaged, and who may not be at the Occupy movements because their PTSD will not allow them to be in crowds. My brother, and I know he never vocalized it, and he was a part of the Occupy here in Chicago. On our trip, we went to Philadelphia and Zuccotti Park in New York, and marched with about 100 veterans from the Iraq Veterans Against the War headquarters through Wall Street down to Zuccotti Park, and it is just so visible, the discomfort and agony on these soldiers' faces. But to get this movement going, we do have a lot of veterans, but we need to get them out. Because nobody can discount a veteran, I mean, not to nullify anything else anybody's doing in the Occupy movement, but I think the veterans are a pillar in a big way.
We've had programs at Occupy about the school to prison pipeline. These are the schools to prison. It's school to prison or military. And those schools are so clamped down, it's not easy. I mean, and that's another, I have the greatest respect for the teachers who keep in there fighting for their kids. We always like to say, bring us in and we can tell the students what you can't. Or another teacher who's had us to her class many times, she says, look, I'm supposed to teach my students about how great Martin Luther King was, and yet we're not talking about what the civil rights and justice issues are today. I'm not going to do that. I'm going to educate my kids to what is happening today. She talks to them about Occupy. She was with me in jail. We ran into each other. Oh, hi! We were in jail together at Occupy. Right on. The best teachers. But that's sticking your neck out. Absolutely. This is not easy. And that's another thing where everybody here can help. If you know teachers, please give them our email address. Tell them, get in touch with us. We want to go there. We also, Cindy Sheehan was recently here a month or two ago, and she was telling us we really have to get into the colleges too, and we haven't been doing that around here because her son, Casey, was recruited out of college. It's not only the high school students, and he, as we all know, he died in Iraq. So anybody who lives in the city, you know people who know people. And it's another part of this culture. Are we going to have a culture that criticizes that warrior mentality and questions what are we actually fighting for and opens that up and supports the soldiers who come home and need to open up? Or are we going to just clamp it down with waving the flag and our little yellow ribbons on our SUVs?
The fact of the matter is our guys are coming back. They have no idea why they were there.
And I blame the military for that simply because when Tony came back from Iraq, they turned in their weapons, took him off the bus, left the families. They told these soldiers, don't drink too much, don't beat your wives. Sent them on their way. There was no downtime, no debriefing at all. And I truly do. If there was a way to sue them, I think I would have. Truthfully, I do.
I mean, the whole war is based on lies. It's lies from the beginning to the end. What are WMDs? The whole thing is a lie.
I have 2 quick questions. One, I was wondering that if I'm correct, when 3 women got raped in the military by fellow soldiers, does We're Not Your Soldiers teach that to the youth? And also, how do you teach gay and lesbian youth that it's not a good thing to join the military?
I want to speak to that. Yes, we do talk about the assault that happens in the military, I in June, in Philadelphia, Mathis Thoreau and Sam Goldman from World Family went into the school in Philadelphia, and specifically that got mentioned, that 1 in 3 women get raped, 1 in 5 men get raped in the military. Your point about the LGBT youth getting taught that it's not a good idea to go into the military is well taken, and I will address that. Because as many people know, Don't Ask, Don't Tell was repealed, and that in the LGBT community got, widely celebrated, and as a lesbian and somebody who has been against these wars, against the crimes of our government, that's just not something that I can celebrate. I agree that it should be repealed on the basis that it is very discriminatory, but it's nothing to celebrate that, a whole nother section gets to go and fight and die in these wars. There's nothing to celebrate about that.
Also, I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
Iraq Veterans Against the War, they focused on women's issues quite a bit this year entirely. And personally, down in Zuccotti Park, they spent about 2 hours at the GA addressing a lot of women's issues.
It's in our quiz too. The quiz that we hand out to students, that's like question 3 or 4, is about sexual assault.
Thank you so much.